So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. Guys, before the video starts, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification, share the videos. I really appreciate your support. All of you are smashing the like button and it's really helping the videos get out there. So yeah, I appreciate it. Guys, I'm going to break this down into two different videos. I'm going to hopefully upload a couple of videos tomorrow. I'm going to give Andre Ward's side of the story and Canelo's side of the story. And then I'm also going to do a video about Teofimo. And obviously Chisora Parker. Canelo basically in an interview, according to some of my subscribers, that he said it, he said in an interview in Spanish that even if, Andre Ward comes with Caleb Plant, I can fight them both on the same night and I'll beat them both, something like that. And I think Canelo's supposed to say things like that. Canelo's supposed to say that. Canelo's supposed to be confident. He's supposed to be confident that he beats both, Ward and it doesn't matter who's training Caleb Plant. Canelo's confident in his own ability that he beats anybody. And will it sit down with Canelo that, Andre Ward is training Caleb Plant? I don't think Canelo would really care. Why would you really care who's training him? Because at the end of the day, Andre Ward's not going to get in the ring with fighting. I think Canelo would obviously know that there's a lot going on in the media about Ward and him and the rivalry between the both. And Canelo's achieved so much and he's such a great fighter that he probably feels he would beat Ward in his prime. He'd beat Ward anyway. One thing about Canelo is Canelo fights everybody. Canelo's not afraid to fight anybody. And I think Canelo has proven that, time and time again, that he's not afraid, even if it's a style that's, not so much favorable to him, he'll get in there and fight. I think Andre Ward is going to help Caleb Plant. I definitely think that having someone like Andre Ward in your camp is definitely going to help. But I don't think we should take too much from those comments. I just think that, Canelo was asked a question and he responded, I don't care who's training him. And that's what he meant. I don't think he meant it in any disrespect to Andre Ward or any kind of beef. I don't really think Canelo has any, was meant any disrespect. I just think he's just showing he's confident in his own ability and he's confident that he's going to get the job done against Caleb Plant. So yeah, I think that's what it is. Listen, Caleb Plant and Andre Ward are probably close, and as Andre Ward has explained, which I will explain in another video where Andre Ward talks about Caleb Plant and his history with Canelo. But yeah, I don't think we should take too much into what Canelo had to say in that interview. I don't think he meant it with any kind of disrespect or there was anything brewing from it. But I do feel that there's something going on, and maybe that's been lit by the media. Maybe the fans are fantasizing about it because it would be a great fight. But what I find funny is that when Canelo knocked out Kovalev, right? Surely that would have been the time to start talking. And there was, listen, there has been talk about this fight for a while now. But when Andre Ward retired, listen, when your guy's retired, he doesn't have to come back. So, to be honest with you, if Andre Ward doesn't come back to fight Canelo, he doesn't need to. He's proved everything. And I think he was the one that was a little reluctant. Like, he's always been like, I'm retired, I don't need to come back. Canelo will be game for it. Canelo will be okay to fight Andre Ward. He'd have no problem. But for Andre Ward, for me, Andre Ward didn't really get a super fight. He didn't really get involved in a super fight against an all-time great, unfortunately. Canelo could have been Andre Ward's super fight if Ward was interested. And it could still, for Ward, that would still be a big fight. For Ward's legacy, that would be great. For Canelo, he won't get much credit because people will say Ward was washed up, Ward was old. Canelo fought another great past his best. So really, if you look at that fight, Canelo has nothing to gain in that fight. If he beats Ward, Ward was washed. He was past his best. If Ward comes back and beats Canelo, Ward would be beating the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world after being inactive. So Ward would have everything to gain, from a credibility point of view. And also, Ward never really got a legacy fight, and I think that's why he's a little underrated, is because Ward never got to really fight an all-time great where he fought in a massive super fight, and he didn't even, I think Ward made great money, but I don't think he made the kind of money that his talent, the talent that he had. I don't think Ward really got those kind of purses, really. When you think about it, you know, the Kovalev, he made some good money, but nothing crazy, you know. And a fight with Canelo Alvarez, firstly, would have done wonders for his legacy, but not just for his legacy, but he would have got a huge payday at the same time. And Ward didn't really get that, if I'm honest with you. I don't really think Ward got those big super fights that he craved. And that's why he was looking for a Golovkin fight. Although he fought Kovalev, and Kovalev was a great fighter, no doubt about it. But I still don't feel it was like a super fight. It wasn't like a stellar. It was a guy that was a dominant light heavyweight. But again, a light heavyweight that didn't even fight the other best light heavyweight, which was Stevenson. A light heavyweight, when you go down his resume, who did he really beat? You know, when you think about it, who was Kovalev's best wins? You know, like, the resume is quite thin. He was a great fighter, no doubt about it, but he never really had the competition, Kovalev. You know, there was a guy in Stevenson that Kovalev didn't fight, or the fight didn't happen. Whoever you thought was ducking, the fact is the fight didn't happen, and that was a guy that people thought could beat Kovalev. So Andre Ward, for me, on his resume, lacked that dancing partner. He lacked that other all-time great. And Canelo would have been that for me. Or Golovkin could have potentially been that. Because Golovkin was proven. Golovkin fought Canelo, and he was proven. You know, and I think the time when Ward was calling out Golovkin, I don't think Golovkin had fought Canelo. So he was still unproven, but Golovkin proved himself after. Whereas Kovalev, for me, he didn't really, you know, you could say he proved himself against Andre Ward, because that first fight he deserved to win, in my opinion. And it was close. And both fights he did well. You know, he ran out of steam in the second fight and got stopped. But I still think that Andre Ward really didn't get the big fight, and he didn't really get the paydays that he deserved, that his talent deserved. I definitely think a fight with someone like Canelo would have been everything that probably Andre Ward craved in terms of big super fight. Listen, I don't think he really cares looking back at it, because he had a great career and he was undefeated and he achieved so much. But I still think that he didn't really get a super fight, a fight which everybody was interested in. Like, what people really interested in, like Kovalev, Ward did poor numbers. You know, it didn't do great numbers. Now, even if he had fought Canelo, you'd have to say that, you know, there wouldn't have been big. It would have been big numbers. But would that have been Ward? Probably not. Canelo, we know whoever he fights does big numbers. But Ward would have been bringing a lot to the table, because Ward's a great fighter. So a lot of people would be interested. So a lot of the hardcores would definitely be interested in that. And listen, the casuals would also be interested, because it's a fight against two of the best in the world. And that always brings out a lot of fans. I think also Ward would have been involved in a fight which could have sold out a huge stadium, could have done 60, 80, 90,000 fans in a stadium. Now, a fight like that usually probably would have gone in Las Vegas, and they would have put the ticket prices up. But if Ward or Canelo wanted to, they could have done that in a huge stadium, because that fight would have sold. You know, if Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo Alvarez sold 60, 70,000, then Canelo could have sold way more than that. So I feel like Andre Ward had a great career, but I think there was a void. And what it was is that I don't really think he had a dance partner like a Canelo Alvarez, where it wasn't just, he had Kovalev, which was a great fight, but he didn't have someone like Canelo Alvarez, who was a cash cow, who was a massive star, who was well known, who would have catapulted Ward to another level. And that's why I think Ward was a little underrated, because he fought some good fighters, but none of them were really elite fighters, bar Kovalev, and even Kovalev wasn't really a big name. So Canelo wasn't just an elite fighter, he was also a very big name that would have catapulted Ward onto another level, if Ward had won, of course. But unfortunately, the fight just, that fight at the time when Canelo was fighting and Ward was around, it probably just, no one was really talking about it. And I'm going to do a separate video talking about Ward's response, his interview with Fight Hype. But at the time, nobody was really talking about that fight. So I get from that point of view, I understand why, Ward's saying, I'm not coming back. There's nothing there. But I think Ward needed that big fight. I think Ward needed a fight like a Canelo. And that would have really enhanced his legacy. I think he's kind of underrated because he didn't get that big super fight. You see, Kovalev wasn't really a super fight for me. What other big fight did he have? All the guys in the super middleweight division he was expected to beat, really. I don't really think there was any great fighter in the super middleweight division. Like, there was Kessler, there was Abraham Froch. But these are good fighters, but they're not great fighters. You know what I mean? They're not what I would call elite fighters. They're good fighters, they're good, solid names. But, they're not Canelo Alvarez. And that for me is what Ward lacked. He lacked a name of that kind of level on his resume. And that's why I think Ward's a little underrated, and Ward doesn't really get the credit because he doesn't really have those big names on his resume. He has good, solid wins, but nothing special. And I think if he had guys like Canelo Alvarez on his resume, I think people would look at Ward in a completely different way. Some people don't consider Ward an all-time great because they don't think his resume is that strong. They think the guys that if the level of competition wasn't that great. I personally think he is, because I think even though the competition wasn't that great, I still think see with Canelo, the reason why he's an all-time great, he's not just fought in this weight class, he's also fought in other weight classes. So he's a 4-division world champion, and he's moving up weight classes and dominating, whereas Ward dominated one division really in super middleweight, and I don't think the division was that great. However, but I think he definitely dominated. He dominated and he beat everybody convincingly at super middleweight. Nobody really gave him any kind of fight, to be honest. He beat everybody. So I think he is definitely an all-time great, but I think he didn't really fight another all-time great. Even Kovalev, for me, I don't really look at him as an all-time great, to be honest. I think he's a good fighter, but not an all-time great. Especially when you look at down Kovalev's resume, it's nothing to shout about. What's his best win? Cleverly, Bernard Hopkins, who was 50 at the time. John Pascal, John Pascal wasn't a light heavyweight, he was really a super middleweight. So, yeah, I think you got to question Kovalev's resume. I personally think Ward lacked a Canelo fight. He lacked a legacy fight like Canelo Alvarez, to be honest. That's just my opinion. But leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.